What's up, gamers? Welcome to Gamer Rant. My name's Kevin. I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions about the DEI controversy surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows. So, here we have this copy of a tweet. Should Ubisoft delay Assassin's Creed Shadows in response to widespread backlash over the game's injection of DEI? The game is so thoroughly woke that it features a black gay protagonist depicted as a real historical samurai in Japan. Offensive beyond belief. Elon Musk, as we can see, decided to chime in. DEI kills art. Allow me to tell you why he is 100% correct. Alright, editing Gamer Rant here. So you will find that I kind of talk more about specifically Hollywood in relation to this whole DEI, and I think that's because they have a lot of prime examples, though in this particular video I kind of focus on the live action of Little Mermaid, but I still think that it totally equates to all forms of entertainment that try to force interject DEI simply for that check mark to get more money at the end of the day, because it is a hindrance to the authenticity and the creativity that this art and its other forms of it, whether we're talking books, comic books, films, etc., ultimately have to offer in the end. Okay, so what I'm about to say can be iterated for any form of DEI and any form of entertainment. Here's the reality. I'm going to give you an example. Did the world need a black Ariel? No, factually, objectively, it did not. What it needed was a black mermaid with her own thought, her own being, her own motivations, her own skills, her own beliefs, her own father and mother, her own story, instead of the hand-me-down sloppy seconds of a white story. Because that's what Disney decided to give people. This is the iteration of you, the minorities. We're going to be so lazy that you don't deserve original, authentic character. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you the hand-me-downs of white people's story, and we're just going to slap a skin tone or, some other minority in the place of that character. And if you don't like it, well, you could go to the back of the bus, because that's literally what Disney is basically saying. You can go to the back of the bus. You're not worth our time or effort to create original, authentic characters. It's not worth our time and effort to create brand new princesses that stand on their own merit. And this is the biggest issue that we see in the realm of DEI in all of its facet in entertainment. Because what it's supposed to be is creating brand new characters, not shoehorning minorities into sloppy seconds. Nobody needed a black Ariel. What they needed was a brand new princess that could be added to the roster that would become beloved just like Ariel from the animated series. That's what they needed, but that's not what they got. And then you look at this. Okay, so how does this fit in? Now, there's a lot of things here, all right? There's quite the amount of stories about Yasuke. I might be mispronouncing his name, but that's what Yasuke? I'm just going to call him Yasuke, okay? And there's a lot of entertainment, ironically also created by Japan as well, as a samurai. But the problem with this is, why didn't they just have a male protagonist, and then this could have been an expansion pack to the game? Look at that. I solved that fucking problem in like fucking 2-3 seconds. But instead, now it's like, okay, so you know what? What we're going to do is why give you a Japanese male protagonist when we could get the check mark for that diversity and inclusion and equality? And this is the biggest problem with DEI. So here's the reality in terms from a writer's perspective, is that anything that is forced within writing, usually pretty much 99% of the time, is guaranteed to fail. And that's because you have an agenda, you have a reason, you have a motivation outside of just simply creating a story. Let's go back to The Little Mermaid, for example, ladies and gentlemen. I believe the actress's name, or the actress's / singer's name, was Haley, so that's what I'm going to refer to the mermaid as. We see Haley sitting on the same rock from the animated film, and she's looking off, and she actually sees Ariel and maybe the prince up somewhere, okay? And she has her own little fish friends. She doesn't have the same friends as Ariel, though we will see Flounder, Sebastian, and I forget the bird's name, okay? We will see them, but she has her own. And, King Triton actually shows up. And he shows up because he says they usually come down to the beach and they talk and, so on and so forth. He visits the grandkids, etc., etc., etc. And she wants to go there, but her motivation is completely different. She wants to go travel the world. She even has a mermaid boyfriend already, but her boyfriend doesn't want to go. And we're going to even stick with the actress that played Ursula, because apparently she was probably, from what I gather, the best thing about the movie. And we're going to play on that iteration from the animated film. Oh, she died, but no, she really didn't die. She was highly injured. It looked like she died, magic and all that stuff. So we're going to bring her back for the live action film. She's a little more cautious, a little more careful. And that's how Ursula can come back. Generic, yes, but the idea is to add to the roster of princesses. So Haley is her own character with her own thoughts, her own feelings, her own songs that she wants to sing. Even if we want to iterate like a face cover of maybe one or two of the popular songs from the animated film, sure, but for the most part, her songs are going to be original because she is her own individual person. And then there's going to come a point where, you know, maybe she goes to King Triton and, hey, can you do this? He says, no, you got to go talk to your father because I'm not your father. So now we're stipulating this reality that just like the land on, you know, the world where we divide it up, the ocean is divided up among different types of mermaids too. And they have their own kings. King Triton is not the one-all, be-all, rule-all. I mean, this stuff isn't that hard. All it takes is a little creative imagination. And granted, I'm just sitting here spitballing. And it may sound generic, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the writer and what they can write and create, taking the basic generic of what I just said and turning it into a screenplay or even a novel. Because that's what diversity is supposed to be about. That's literally how it was introduced to me. It wasn't, well, just take Little Red Riding Hood and let's turn her into a black child now. Let's turn her into a Japanese character. Because here's another thing that diversity is supposed to be about, and this is something that a lot of studios, whether we're talking Hollywood, whether we're talking video game companies, get incorrect. It's not just about using people, but it's also about using other mythical tales and folklore from other cultures. An example of this is I'm working on a fantasy series where I have the Kappa, which is a type of Japanese yokai, as an actual species, a race, intelligent race in the world that I'm creating. So there's an example of, you know, let's not just use the basic Greek mythology or English mythology and folktale and stories, elves, dwarves, etc., etc. Let's try to pan out and look at other cultures to see what other things that we can create or use within the story. That's another thing that's supposed to be about diversity. And then here comes the biggest problem that we see within modern diversity is agendas. The moment you start adding in agendas is the moment your story is going to fail because nobody likes an agenda. There's also, you know, a reason why people like Luke Skywalker better than, I forget the female Jedi character's name. The basic badass out of the box. Nobody likes that. There was no learning curve there. There was no experience. There was no growing as a character. From the perspective of characterization, she is a garbage character because there is no growth there. But such is the problem and the issue in what we call this modern day diversity is it's no longer about the stories and the characters and getting you to fall in love with these stories and these characters. It's about, I have an agenda. I'm putting this in the story that you've always loved. And if you don't like it, I don't care. And this comes to the next thing. This is something I said back in the day when Anita Sarkeesian was really big on the whole feminist frequency games things. Is, well, you know what, Anita, why don't you shut up, stop talking to talk, and start walking to walk, and go develop your own video games. This shit isn't that hard. If you have a problem with it, go make your own video game. But don't sit here and try and shoehorn your ideas into the art of other people. This is the same thing. Don't try to shoehorn your ideas into the art of other people that was never created by you in the first place. Go create your own stuff. You know, and with just a little bit of imagination, this can be done. As I was talking about with the Little Mermaid example I was giving, because she's her own individual character. And yes, the irony of this, yes, obviously there will come a point near the end of the movie where her boyfriend, because he's actually against it, he eventually agrees to it. And they're both turned into humans and they get to go travel the world. We could even further this very example by then saying that Ursula in this live action film is wearing something throughout the entire time, but you never really see her do anything with it until the end of the movie when a fish grabs it because it's just laying on the seabed that nobody picked up. They come up to the ocean floor, the ocean top, throw it out, a bird grabs it and flies off, all right? And then the camera's just following this bird. Then all of a sudden, after some time, they drop it into the ocean. It floats down, another fish grabs it and takes it to, what is that? Ursula's mom. And she's not happy because now Ariel Ariel and Haley have not once but twice tried to kill her daughter, and one of them succeeded, and she is not happy. And then what are we going to do? We can set this up for a third character, all right? Because the camera pans out of the ocean, we go further down, and there's a girl sitting on a dock with her feet in it, just staring off into the ocean. And then we hear a voice telling her it's time to come home. When the camera pans over, we see someone in the water, and she jumps in the water. And as soon as she does this, her legs immediately turn into that of a mermaid. Which now, what does this show us? That not only, like on land, there's different cultures, but some of these mermaid cultures allow their mermaids to go in and out of the water of their own volition, of their own free will, to interact with humans. And if we really wanted to, we could say that this is Japan or maybe China. And there we go. Now we've just introduced another brand new character to the roster of Disney princesses. This shit is not hard, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a fucking guy, and I can do this. But the problem becomes that interjection of an individual's philosophies and their way of thinking. And the reality of it is, nobody gives a shit about your politics, no more than nobody gives a shit about my politics or religious belief. I am an atheist, but there is no way that I would ever inject that to preach to children or other adults, because at the end of the day, they don't care. They don't care about it, and to me, it would be stupid, because the moment you have an agenda is the moment that your story fails, and nobody's going to care for it, nobody's going to like it. Okay, editing gamer rant here again. So I just kind of want to touch on this little subject a little bit more. So in terms of agenda, I want you to think about this in context to a theme. You kind of learn this in English class. A lot of English teachers make it out to be very important. But the reality of it is when you're writing a story, you don't really focus on the theme, because the moment you force the theme, the moral of the story is the moment the moral of the story will fail, because the reader, whether we're talking children, whether we're talking teenagers, whether we're talking adults, don't like to be preached to. So focus on the characters and the story, and the ultimate moral of it will encompass it. This same philosophy fits ironically with any form of DEI. The moment you force it is the moment it's going to fail, especially if you have an agenda. And this is pretty much the context of what we see, whether we're talking video games, comic book, Hollywood, etc., is this forced agenda, this forced DEI. And that is ultimately why a lot of these are failures within of themselves, because it is forcing a narrative, a particular stance from an individual on it. There's a reason why you see certain films, for example, in Hollywood, where a lot of the males act like they're fucking idiots and they don't know what they're doing. That is to glorify the female protagonist or her and her friends, and we have to vitriolize the male within the story. Again, it's an agenda, and there's the reason why, ironically, females and males don't like what you write. Same when it comes to Assassin's Creed Shadows. This just isn't white males. This is males of all diversities and female of all diversities that are taking issue with this. This is the fact that has been the controversy of any kind of controversy when it comes to DEI. This was the same thing when we saw about the Little Mermaid live action. It was not just simply white males, it was everyone and their mother in the kitchen sink. Ironically, a diverse amount of audience that did not like what was being shoved in their face. This, at the end of the day, a lot to take in, and yes, I didn't really touch that much on Assassin's Creed Shadows, but the philosophy fits. I think literally at its core, what would have been better is a Japanese male protagonist, and they literally could have done this as an expansion pack, and it would have been far well better received. I guarantee it. Like I said, all it takes is a little bit of a fucking imagination. This shit is not hard. You follow your imagination, you keep your personal political agendas to yourself, and just focus on the story and the characters, and holy shit, what do we have? DEI that is done factually correct, more correct than any company has been doing thus far.